tribal society, and the challenge of colonialism. The establishment of the British rule in India saw a significant transformation in the traditions, customs, and practices of the tribals. Before analyzing the impact of the British rule on the life of the tribals of India, let us understand the varied occupations and activities of the tribal communities. Shifting cultivators. Many tribal groups in India practiced shifting cultivation. They burned the vegetation on small patches of land in the forests. The ash from the fire was used to fertilize the soil. Once the field produced crops, they harvested it and then moved to another field. This kind of cultivation was known by different names like Jhum, Bevar, Dhaiya, Podu, Penda, Bringa, Valre, Khil, etc. The tribes of Northeast and Central India practiced shifting cultivation. In order to practice this form of cultivation, the tribes needed to have free movement over the entire forest and to cultivate a field and then leave it uncultivated for a couple of years. The idea behind it was that the field regained its fertility. In forest areas, the tribes used herbs for medicine, wood for agricultural implements, bamboo for making fences, baskets, and umbrellas. Thus, the forest tribes were totally dependent on forest products. Hunters and food gatherers. Even in the 19th century, many tribal groups still practiced their centuries old occupation of hunting and food gathering. Naturally, these tribal groups were dependent on forests for their survival. The entire group did collective hunting and ate fruits and roots collected from the forests. They sold forest produce in the local markets. The pastoral tribes. Many tribal groups were pastoral nomads who moved from place to place with their herds of animals, cattle, sheep, goat, and camel. Pastoralists followed a seasonal migration when the grass and fodder got exhausted at one place and they had to move on in search of new pastures. Settled cultivators. The settled cultivators had given up the tribal traditions of moving from one place to another. Instead, they had started settling at one place, tilling their land with the plow. Some tribal groups were also practicing settled cultivation. Generally, they followed the tribal tradition of collectively owning the land. The land belonged to the entire tribal group as a whole. All the members of the tribe had rights over the land. But in spite of this basic equality, some powerful members of the tribe became the chiefs of the tribals and spokespersons for their respective tribal groups. The Mundas Santhals and Gonds were settled tribal groups belonging to eastern and central India. The British believed that these tribal groups were much more civilized than the mobile groups. The British considered them to be much more safer and stable than the shifting cultivators, the pastoralists, or the hunter food gatherers. Impact of the British rule on the life of the tribal people. Number one, the motive of the British was to exploit the forests commercially. So they passed the Forest Acts, dividing the forest into three categories: reserve forests, protected forests, and village forests. The British put the best forests in the category of reserved forests. Villagers could not take anything from these forests, even for their personal consumption. Number two, the tribals wanted the forests to meet their various needs. They wanted the naturally rich forests with a mixture of plants and trees. The British, however, only wanted trees like teak and sal, which would provide strong wood to build ships and rail tracks. So they started cutting down all the other plants and trees. The British wanted the forests to serve their commercial purpose alone. Number three, due to the Forest Acts, life of the tribes was severely affected. They needed the forests to graze their cattle, to collect fruits and roots, to hunt and fish. But Forest Acts made all these forest based activities illegal. If the tribals were found cutting wood in the forest, they were caught by the forest guards, who would harass them by demanding bribes and free food. Number four, the British government banned shifting cultivation because they regarded the practice as harmful for the forests. Due to the ban on shifting cultivation, many tribal communities were displaced from the forests. Number five, forest laws banned hunting by the tribes. Those who were caught hunting were punished. But while the British deprived the tribes of their traditional hunting rights, they themselves hunted tigers and other big animals as a sport and entertainment. Number six, as the tribals lost their traditional rights over the forests, many of them were forced to work in mines and plantations. Santals and Orans from Jharkhand and Gonds from Chhattisgarh were forced to work in tea plantations of Assam. They were given very low wages and were made to work under harsh working conditions. They were treated as bonded laborers and could not return to their own villages. Number seven, the pastoral nomads could no longer enter most of the forests for grazing of their animals. Even if they wanted to enter, they needed a permit. which specified the timing of their entry and departure. If they overstayed, they were fined. Number 8. The British were suspicious of the nomadic tribes. They were considered to be criminals. In 1871, the British government passed the Criminal Tribes Act, forcing these nomadic tribes to live only in notified village settlements. They were not allowed to move out without a permit. The village police kept a continuous watch on them. Number 9. Now the pastoral tribes had to pay tax on every animal they grazed in the pastures. This was a huge burden on the poor pastoralists. Number 10. The nomadic pastoral tribes used to graze their animals in one area and then move to another. But when the British restricted their movements, they were forced to graze their animal on the same patch of land again and again, which declined the quality of pastures. Poor quality of pastures meant insufficient fodder for the animals and deterioration in the quality of cattle. Tribal revolts in Chota Nagpur. Faced by so much of exploitation, many tribal groups rose in revolt. While the records of the British government condemned these revolts and claimed that they were ruthlessly suppressed, the folk songs, folk tales, and the legends of the tribals glorify these as great acts of heroism. Santhal revolt. The Santhals, who were settled cultivators, were deprived of their ownership of land. They were forced to become tenants of the zamindars who charged them a high rent. The helpless Santhals were forced to borrow money from the moneylenders, who cheated them by charging a high rate of interest. Out of deep anger and frustration, the Santhals revolted. The main revolt took place between 1855 to 1857. The revolt spread across the entire Santhal region from present day Bihar to Odisha. The Santhals attacked the moneylenders, police, court officials, and the landlords. The Santhals vowed to drive away the British from their land. The Santhals killed many British officers and local moneylenders. Finally, the British were forced to give some concession to the Santhals. They were assured protection against the exploitation of the moneylenders, policemen, and the landlords. The leaders of the Santhal revolt were four brothers: Sidhu, Kanhu, Chand, and Bhairav. Munda revolt. The Mundas belonged to the Bihar region. Their revolt was led by Birsa Munda. The main revolt took place in 1899 to 1900. It aimed at driving away the British and establishing the Munda Raj. Led by Birsa Munda, they wanted to go back to the golden age when the Mundas had been free from all injustice and oppression. In this revolt, also, the main target of attack were the British officials, missionaries, money lenders, zamindars, and the policemen. They wanted the rights on the lands which belonged to their ancestors. As the leader of the Mundas, Birsa too wanted his people to revive the golden age of the past, when Mundas cultivated their own land, took care of the forests, and lived in harmony with nature. The aim of the revolt was to set up a Munda Raj with Birsa as the leader. They attacked the landlords who were taking over their land, the moneylenders who cheated them, the policemen who harassed them, and the missionaries who attacked their traditional culture. The Mundas attacked police stations and churches and looted the property of moneylenders and zamindars. Though the revolt was suppressed and the British captured Birsa Munda, the Mundas were given back their traditional rights over their land. Government officials were now more responsive to the complaints and grievances of the Mundas. Revolts in the northeast. Revolt of Nagas. Nagas revolted against the British in 1849, but they were brutally suppressed by the British in 1851. Revolt of Khasis. In Assam, the Khasis revolted against the British in 1829. The Khasis opposed the British, who desired to construct the road which passed through their native land. They decided to throw out the Britishers not only from hilly area but also from the plains. The insurrection lasted for about 4 years. In the end, the Khasis were brutally suppressed. The Kol Rebellion. The Kols inhabited the Chota Nagpur region, part of Bengal Presidency during the British rule. They feared that their independence would be threatened by the British. Under the leadership of Buddhu Bhagat, Joa Bhagat, and Madara Mahato, the Kols rebelled against the British in 1831. Apart from this, the Kols faced exploitation and oppression by non-tribals like zamindars, traders, moneylenders. The rebellion continued for 2 years, and finally they lost to the British troops equipped with modern weapons. Revolt of Khons in Odisha. The Khons of Odisha led a primitive life. They revolted against the British in 1846 because they, Khons, feared that the British would annex their land and force them to adopt other occupations. Finally, they were suppressed by the British in 1848 and surrendered to British rule. Revolt of Kukis in Manipur and Tripura. The Kukis were the inhabitants of Lushai Hills in and around the region of Manipur and Tripura. They raided the British territories respectively in 1829, 1844, and 1849, but were forced to surrender finally in 1850. There were many other revolts by the different tribes. The Koi revolt of 1859 was against the autocratic and domineering British rule. Bastar rebellion in central India broke out in 1910 and the Worli revolt in Maharashtra in 1940.